Come on, get in here. Get in here. We're late. We're 7 minutes late for Mindset Mastery, or not Mindset Mastery, for Strengthen Your Soul. Get in here. Get in here. We need you. Get in here. Come on. Come on. I'm running late. We're running late tonight. Get in here. We got to talk about your soul. We got work to do. Come on. Get in here. Get in here. Welcome. Grab a drink. We're 8 minutes late. So we're going to bump the schedule by 8 minutes, but grab a drink. We're going to take a drink together in just a little bit here. We can't be together, but we can be on the screen together. Get in here. We're going to talk about facing your fears tonight and how do you overcome fear. Come on. Come on. We need you. Yeah, you. We were waiting for you. Great to have you. Grab a drink. Tonight, for me, it's water. It's water. We're going to take a sip in about 1 minute. We'll just wait for a few more people to get in here. Again, apologies for being late. We had some friends that we were chatting with, and it went longer than anticipated. So we're a few minutes late. Come on. Come on, get in. All right, you got 15 seconds. We're going to take a drink together in 15 seconds. And here we go. Let's have a sip together. It's good to be with you. Let's talk about your soul. So tonight, we are talking about how do you face your fear? And there might be nothing as important as learning how to face your fears as we go through one of the most uncertain times in our whole life. So, let me just give you a quick definition of fear. I'm borrowing material tonight from a book called Cry of the Soul by Dr. Dan Allender and Dr. Tremper Longman III. And so they say that this is, we feel fear when we feel a loss of control. So fear, according to these two brilliant scholars, is the emotional reaction we have when we feel a loss of control. And so, it's a tremendously important topic because right now we have airports shutting down, restaurants shutting down, schools shutting down. Life is not in control. And if we've learned at least one thing, and we've learned a lot of things from this virus, but if we've learned one thing, we have learned this, that we are not nearly as in control as we want to be. So let me start off with a bit of a story. About 6 years ago, when my wife and I, we were starting a not-for-profit, our church, we were working incredibly hard, and there was one day where all of the weight of starting something on your own pressed deeply on my soul enough that I had what I would call a breakdown. I was talking to my wife about just how I was feeling, and I started to shake. And I couldn't stop shaking, and my hands were shaking, and then my chest started shaking, and my lips were trembling. And I was completely unable to stop it. What's weird about it, though, and this hopefully will be helpful for some of you, this could change your life alone. Just this one statement. The weird part is I didn't feel afraid at all. So part of what we're going to do tonight is talk about 4 core fears that people have, and then some of the symptoms of fear. And then, as we grow in self-awareness, we're going to try to actually start to overcome our fears. We'll probably do a series at one point diagnosing each of these 4, and we'll take a longer time. But I'm gonna lay them out for you because often a lot of people, we don't feel fear, but we experience it. And then one day, it's like the floor drops out from underneath us. So let's talk a little bit about fear. I want to give you 4 types of fear that many people have. One is this, it's a fear of rejection. So the fear of rejection sort of goes like this. It's the fear that if people do not love you, then your life is not worth living. So, a lot of us, we have this thing we call people pleasing. which sounds really nice, but is completely and utterly toxic. So many of us with the fear of rejection, we call ourselves people pleasers, which is symptomatic of the need to be loved in order to feel strong, in order for our soul to feel at ease. Some other people, they don't have a fear of rejection blanket, but there are certain people in their lives that if they don't respect or admire you, it fills you with fear. Second one is this. It's the fear of failure. So the fear of failure is this. I must meet certain standards or certain levels of achievement in order to feel good about myself. So those with a fear of failure often will be risk averse or will be highly driven and competitive. So if you're risk averse, you don't want to look silly, you don't want to put yourself out there. It's often a sign of the fear of failure. And I'll tell you in a little bit which are mine. And typically people have one core fear of these four and other ones that kind of grow and fall. They shrink and they expand. So there's the fear of failure. It means you're afraid to risk or you're highly competitive and you must always win. The third one is this. It's the fear of shame. So the fear of shame is something like this. It goes, I am afraid that if people saw who I really was, they would not want to be around me. The fear of shame also shows up in sort of a resignation. Where you go, I can't change. I can't be something more. And the fear of shame, it's growing in our society more and more. In our culture, if you have the wrong sets of beliefs, if you say the wrong statements, it's very, very common to feel a sense of shame. So the difference between shame and guilt is very important. I'll explain it to you really quick. We could go into this in greater ways, but the difference between shame and guilt is this. Guilt says, I did something wrong. And so that actually leads us to our fourth one, which is the fear of punishment. So the fear of punishment could also be called the fear of guilt. And this occurs, these are the people who can't admit that they're wrong. Or when they've done something wrong, they won't apologize for it. They'll make excuses. Because they're worried that if they admit their failure, they admit their guilt, they'll be punished. So guilt is saying this, I did something wrong. And shame is this, I am someone wrong. So this is, I did something bad, I am someone bad. That's the difference. So here's a question for you. Which of these two describe you the most? Which fear is your core fear? Are you afraid of rejection, or failure, or shame, or punishment? Now for me, this one is my deepest one, the fear of rejection, and then fear of failure is sort of my number two. So I don't really feel often the fear of punishment. If I do something wrong, it's very easy for me to go, that was wrong, I'm sorry. If I don't often feel like I am a bad person, the fear of shame, but I do often feel deeply unlovable. And that shows up in my failure. So even when I started doing these videos, there was a lot of fear and anxiety I could feel going on in my body. I could literally just feel it. My mouth would get all clammy. I wouldn't want to do the video. Now I'm having a lot of fun, and I really appreciate y'all tuning in. So which is your great core fear? And if there was a second one, which would it be? Which would it be? And then the question is, I'll give you one other symptom too, because some of you that are listening and you go, I never feel afraid. Like I never feel afraid. And if you never feel afraid, and shows up more often in men, but sometimes in women too, often people who never ever feel fear, they will feel anger. And anger is actually the way fear shows up in their life, because with anger we power up and we try to regain control. So anger often can actually be a fear response in the sense of I've lost control. I'm going to get angry. I'm going to regain control, and then my fear is quelled. So which is you. And then what do you do when you identify your fear? So I'll erase this. So how do you start facing your fear? And how do you interact with God? How do you let God start to deal with your fear? The first one is this. One is simply this. It's just awareness. Until you are aware of what you fear, you cannot face it. You might feel some of the anxiety in your soul. You might feel some of the anger in your soul. You might feel depression in your soul. Those are all symptomatic often of fear. Because I've mentioned depression, I just want to say some of you actually just need medical help. Many times people with depression need some help. And but I'm talking about a depressed soul, not brain chemistry here. So the first step is awareness. The second part is this. You need to discover the lie, or what I call discover the root. So if fear is the fruit, you need to go after the root. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to ask God, the universe, life. And again, I say this all the time. If you're here and you're outside of faith, these are meant to help you. Jesus promised that if you would trust him and follow him, he would actually set you free. And so we're actually putting that to the test tonight, no matter where you are in terms of a faith background. So when I reference the universe, I'm speaking about God. I'm speaking about Jesus. But you need to discover the root. So I'll tell you why. Somebody just chimed in. Thank you. They said rejection for me. I'll tell you why my rejection showed up and how I got free, and then we'll take a minute or two to start leaning in. The third step is simply ask for truth, ask for help. So I'll tell you where my fear of rejection, part of it showed up. My sister and I were about 6 years apart, love my sister like crazy. But my grandpa only had 2 grandchildren on my mom's side. And for my whole life, even as a little kid, my grandpa always loved my sister more. There was no debate in our family. She would be given amazing and remarkable help to get through university, and she'd get amazing birthday presents, and I would get tokens of his affection. She'd get a treasure chest, and I'd get tokens. And part of what happens to kids when they experience favoritism is this. If you're not on the receiving end, what you end up believing about yourself is this. There is something about me that makes people not love or like me. So I lived there. And so I actually had to go, God, where did this come from? And some of it came actually from this time with my grandpa. And so what came inside of me was this lie that I'm not really lovable nor likable. And then I had to pray and go, God, would you give me a truth that would change everything? And so one of the thoughts that came into my mind as I was sitting there listening was this, that my Father in heaven, God, not only does he love me, but he likes me. And that might not sound like much to you, but something broke inside of me when I realized that. So, are you ready to try? We're going to pause. And again, we had our list of 4. If you just tuned in, it's rejection, guilt, fear of punishment. Rejection, failure, punishment, and shame. Those are the 4 core fears that many people face. Which one is yours? And then we're going to go, God, would you show me where this came from? And we're going to stop and think and listen to our thoughts, because often God interacts with us in our thoughts. And then we're going to ask for what the real truth is. Make sense? So let's take 30 seconds. So you can just model this prayer. You can say it out loud or in your head and your heart. God, would you show me where my fear of rejection started, where it came from? And I'd recommend you pray in Jesus' name. You don't have to, but I would recommend that. Where did my fear come from? Sometimes it can be simple stuff. It can even be stuff that happened with your siblings or your parents. Could happen from a tragedy in your life. Where'd your fear start? What's the root? And then we're going to go, God, what is deeply true about me that I can think about when I feel fear? And again, you're just going to think, pray, and whatever thought comes to mind. God is one who actually calls humanity to be full of courage. The number one command in the Bible is to not be afraid. So he wants to help you. The Father of your soul wants to help you more than you possibly know to live a life of courage. So you ask him, what is true about me? And let him speak to you in your thoughts and write it down. And then number 4, recite it. So this is the key right here. When you feel fear, because you're going to feel it at times, when you feel your anger rise up, or when you feel your sense of dirtiness rise up, or you feel like your soul is trembling, or your mouth is going dry, you take the truth and you recite it out loud in your head, doesn't matter, until the fear breaks and you can move forward in courage. So for me, I just think about this. My Father in heaven, he loves me. My Father in heaven, he likes me. My Father in heaven, he loves me. My Father in heaven, he likes me. And I say it over and over until I'm filled with courage. And that's how you can begin to face your fear. So, with that being said, if you want to help, there's people who could use this video. You can like or comment or share. And my hope is actually that we would all help people strengthen their souls, no matter what their faith background or lack of background is. With that being said, hope your soul is strong. It's great to see you. And I hope you can face your fear well today. We'll see you tomorrow, 8 o'clock.